You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Taylor Kosla, partner at, what's that?
Oh, I just said hello.
Hi, partner at Agruss law firm focusing on personal injury and consumer rights. And we have Michael Agruss, managing partner at the Agruss law firm located in Chicago, Illinois. We have them both together today. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, how are things in the Windy City?
They're good. I'd say about 30 minutes before we start recording, I thought there was going to be a tornado.
Nice.
So I actually wasn't sure this was going to happen, but we're good.
Oh, it was going to happen, whether you liked it or not, Mike. Hey, the Bears are 1-1 after 2 weeks. What else can you ask for, you know?
Totally. Yeah. So we survived an almost tornado, and yeah, Bears are 1-1. So we're
all right.
good.
Well, I'm glad there was no tornado, and it's really nice to have you guys in. Love your website, by the way. Super cool. You did a lot of you do some nice stuff with it, and I hope everybody goes check it out. So Taylor, I want to just start with you. Like, this is Lawyer Stories, so we like to go through the stories a little bit. So just tell us where you're from.
I'm from the northwest suburbs of Chicago. So I've lived in the area my whole life, and I currently live in Chicago.
That's awesome. So, like, did you have a moment when you said to yourself, because I think it was between, like, medicine and law for you, right? So,
right.
Did you have a moment when you were like, I'm going to law school?
Sophomore year high school chemistry class. I hated it.
Really?
And I was like, there's no way I can study science for the next, 8 years or so.
Oh my goodness, I feel that.
I happen to do really well in English and writing, so it made the decision really easy for me.
Yeah, and so you were like, I'm going to go the other profession. I'm going to go to law school. So from then on, you pursued it, correct?
And that's how I am where I am today.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. So question right off the bat, like it appears to me, like, just sort of like doing a little my like pre-podcast research, that you became an equity partner at the firm in like 5 years. Like, how, like, true. So like tell me like what the path is for that, for like do you have, okay, let me rephrase that. Do you have advice to like a young attorney who's really looking to succeed and to sort of just really move quickly in the profession?
Yeah, so number one is picking out a firm where you think you're going to have that opportunity. When I first met Mike, I saw this as a young firm with a lot of growth opportunity, and that's what I was looking for. I wanted to get in at a firm young and be able to make it grow. So from the day I started, I advertised and marketed myself as if this was my own firm. I wanted everyone to know what I did. I did everything I could to help make the firm more efficient. And I think, COVID did play a role in probably bringing me on as partner at such a young age, but it was such a great opportunity for me because now I can really focus all my energy into continuing to make the firm grow at such a young age. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah. So like, how did COVID impact everything, would you say, the firm?
No one really knew what was going to happen in March 2020. And I took that opportunity as this is a time for me to show that I'm invaluable. I was working harder than ever because it was harder to settle cases because, again, no one knew what the future was going to hold. I couldn't get cases to mediation. Personal injury cases kind of stalled for a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Debt collectors were shut down. So it was the only option we had was just to like push forward. And we weathered the storm. I think things slowed down for like a month or two, but they did pick up. And now, 2 years later, we're busier than ever.
That's amazing. Congratulations. So you really have had a lot of value to the firm. So Mike, let's just go over to you. Like, just tell us like where you from, a little background about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in Glen Ellen. I'm living in Elmhurst right now, which is pretty close to Glen Ellen.
Okay.
And I went to college out in California, came back to Chicago for
So
law
that
school.
so let's stop right there. That was a question I actually did have for you. I noticed you went out to California. So like
Twice,
let's
twice.
zoom in on that that little part of the story. Let's give the people some lawyer story here. So you went to California, like you got out of like the Midwest, right? You were said, I'm packing my bags. I'm gonna hightail it down to California. What was that like?
So freshman year of college, I was actually at Bradley University in Peoria.
Yes.
Okay, you're familiar?
Well, it's funny. I'm from Maine, my like home plate, and like my buddy, for one of my good friends, went to his mom was out in Chicago, and he went to Bradley for a year, and it was just so random. We're like Bradley, huh? This was
Yeah,
like years ago, but so I saw that, and I'm like, oh, I know Bradley.
yeah.
Okay.
Very small school. So it's also a big Greek system. I didn't join a fraternity. One of my good buddies from high school went to Miami of Ohio. Also didn't join a fraternity. We're at home over winter break. We're drinking 2 in the morning, and we're like, let's move to California. And
Really?
it's like, yeah, totally. I had never been out to California.
That's crazy because usually those ideas at like 2 in the morning
Totally.
don't come to fruition.
Especially when you're 18 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty wild. So we finished up. I finished up at Bradley and moved out to Santa Barbara and ended up graduating from UC Santa Barbara. I mean, it was a wild experience. I'm so glad that I did it, but
Yeah.
ended up back in Chicago for law school.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So, what made you want to go back to Chicago?
You know, I always had in my mind, I always wanted to go to school in the city. And so I primarily applied to law schools in downtown Chicago. I loved Chicago. I also really liked my experience out in Santa Barbara, but I wanted to come back for law school.
Well, let me ask. This is sort of to both of you, right? So you're both from the area, and right, Taylor, you're sort of like you told us where you're from, but that's geographically, I'm like, I'm not really up to speed with where everything. But tell us like the importance and what that means to really come back into where you're from and like serve the people as like a personal injury lawyer, taking care of the citizens of like where you're from. I mean, that's got to have some sort of like value to you. That's got to mean something, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think what's important about it is, we're Taylor and I grew up, I mean, not far away. We're probably 45 minutes away where we grew up. And we live right now 45 minutes away from each other. But the point is, for me, and I'm sure Taylor the same way, it's about just being close to your family, close to your friends, knowing the area. When we represent personal injury clients, places where they're injured or things that happened, we're familiar. We know the hospital, we know the street, the intersection. So I think it makes, all the difference.
Have you had people from like childhood or high school or something say, "Hey, like I need a personal injury lawyer, or I need a consumer rights person to look into this issue for me"? Like, has it worked out like that at all?
It
Yeah, I think
hasn't
for both of us, but yeah, go Taylor.
happens all the time for
Yeah.
me, especially through Facebook. So I first had a Facebook in high school, I think. So,
Nice.
people from many chapters ago that I haven't spoken to in years, neighbors, you name it. I get messages all the time, sometimes in the middle of the night. And if it's personal injury or consumer, sometimes it's something I don't do at all, maybe a criminal matter. But I love the fact that they look to me and they rely on me. And if I
Yep.
can't help them, I find someone who can help them.
And I just feel good at like it would feel good to like go to somebody who is in like you knew and like you could trust them because they're from where you're at, and like they like Mike said, they know the areas of where an accident might have happened. And I think like that, I think there's a lot to be said for like going back and like sort of helping the people of the town that you really like grew up with. So I think that's really cool. So Mike, just tell us, what was like your first job out of law school?
Sure. So the first job I got at law school was actually about 30 feet away from where I went to law school. It was a tiny firm. They handled personal injury and criminal defense. There were two partners there, and the PI partner took me under his wings. I'd say 95% of my practice was personal injury. I did a little bit of criminal defense, but I really liked the PI practice. The lawyers I worked with were great. I got tons of experience right out of law school. It was great.
So you were going to court and doing all that?
Yeah, court. I tried a case over there, did arbitration,
Wow.
mediation. Yeah, it was awesome. I got a ton of experience over there.
That's awesome. So a couple more questions for Mike. So when did you know it was time to launch your own firm?
So I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to be a
Yeah.
lawyer. And I always knew that I wanted to have my own law firm. And in between undergrad and law school, I took a year and a half off, and I worked for this employment attorney on the plaintiff side as a runner, law clerk type job. He had an employment firm in Santa Barbara. I loved it. He was super casual. He showed up at the office in shorts and t-shirt. This is before people were doing that. With his dog. And
Well,
so
they didn't have COVID yet, I guess. So,
yeah, right.
Zoom or just like,
I mean, it was, yeah, right. It was California, though. Things were laid back. He was a great attorney. I loved working for him. And like I said, he showed up in shorts and a polo. He brought his dog to work every day. And, I always knew I wanted to have my own firm. And when I saw how he ran things, I thought, same thing. I want to have my own firm. I want to be in a building where I can bring my dog or dogs to work. So anyway, at the last firm I was at, I knew that would be the last place that I worked. And it was just a matter of planning things,
Right.
and, being in a position to start my own firm. So I planned things for months and months and months. And when I put in my notice, I was in a position where, if they walked me out that day, I would be ready.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, they do that sometimes. They bring in like the prison guard and you walk.
Totally.
You're escorted out the door.
I will
grab your box of snacks, guy. You're gone. Right.
Yeah, exactly. You get escorted out. I will say this: it is a funny story. When I put in my notice, I mean, I did think I was going to be escorted out. And I remember my boss at the time. He had very few questions for me. And one question, we talked for maybe 3 minutes, and he said, "How long do I have you for?" And I said, "A month." He said, "All right, sounds good." It was the last I ever talked to him.
Well, a month is generous. I mean, like, you could have done 2 weeks. I mean, I guess a lawyer, you have all these cases that are open, but Mike, just give us some advice for somebody who's like contemplating going out on their own. What's like the first or then second thing that they need to get in line before they go hang that shingle?
I have great advice because I was so
Good.
overwhelmed. I was so overwhelmed with the whole entire thing. And a non-attorney gave me some really good advice. And she said, come up with a list of every single thing that you need to do and slowly check off that list. And when the list is done, put in your notice and start your firm. So we're talking getting an LLC, getting a website up, doing the BBB, making, figuring out malpractice insurance, saving up enough money to make sure I could live because, when you start a firm, you don't get paid, so I had just a massive list I worked on for 6 months. And when I put in my notice, like I said, the list was done and I was ready to start the next day. And, I stayed at my job for a month and started March of 2012, which would be just over 10 years ago.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, wicked cool. So, Taylor, tell us how you ended up working with Mike. Like, how did you connect?
So during law school, I clerked at a pretty big size medical malpractice and nursing home abuse firm.
Okay.
And I just didn't care for the size and the focus on those two areas of law. I knew I wanted to be a plaintiff's injury attorney, but I also wanted to do like car accidents. And they didn't do anything outside of med mal and nursing home. So I actually found that Mike was hiring through one of the law school's job marketing things, and I emailed him, and I think we spoke that same day. And I remember this conversation like it was yesterday because we had so many things in common. Where I was studying, he had studied for the bar as well. We lived in the same neighborhood. We seemed to have similar experiences clerking during law school. And I knew nothing about consumer rights. I was drawn toward, the personal injury job.
Right.
And I remember I ended that conversation. I called my dad right away and I said, this is the firm for me.
That's awesome. Like, go ahead. I'm listening.
Oh, and I interviewed a couple days later, and I walked out of the interview and Mike was like, okay, I'll let you know in a week. And I was like, if I have to wait a week to hear about this, because I was so excited.
Yeah,
I knew he was like so cool and he'd be a great person to work
yeah,
for.
yeah.
And the next day he called me and offered the job.
Yeah, no, I could tell. Mike's probably a great mentor. I could tell he's got a nice disposition, man. I could tell that even over Zoom. I really can.
Yeah,
You know,
he's great.
seems that's great. I think it's so important to like have a mentor. Taylor, what would you say? Like, tell us like the importance of having a mentor.
Mike is the most supportive boss and mentor anyone can have. He's always trying to make us better, make us more efficient, make us happy. And I think those are three things bosses don't really consider
Right.
enough. And that just makes us more productive and happy at work, which altogether makes the firm a better place.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's talk about your actual firm now. So Taylor, what is your caseload like in terms of what kind of cases are you taking a majority of now?
So I'd say we are handling just as much personal injury cases as we do consumer at the moment. You know, it changes depending on what's going on. As far as personal injury, we handle everything from car accidents, slip and falls, nursing home abuse and neglect, medical malpractice, really anything that kind of comes in the door. We also just started a workers' comp department that's growing, and that's great. And
Cool.
then consumer rights, this is kind of a niche practice, and that's everything from inaccuracies on your credit report, debt collection harassment, to like business deceptive practices cases.
Okay. So you were a little while ago before you got involved and decided to go to law school, you were sort of had an interest in like medicine. So do you find that interest, I know you didn't go like super far along, like chemistry wasn't really your thing,
All right.
wasn't mine either, and all that was like forget it. But do you think like some of that helps you in personal injury at all, like with like assessing injuries and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
'Cause
even your interest in it helps you excel in that, right?
it does, because I will tell you, reading medical records, not always the most fun or exciting thing to
Right.
do, but I find it really interesting because you're looking at these records and you're creating a story in your head of, you know, on this day they presented to the hospital and this is what they are complaining of. And as you continue to read the records, you see how their injuries and symptoms change over time and, you know, hopefully get better with time.
Right. That's great. So you branded your team over there at Agruss Law Firm as the plaintiff's lawyer. So who wants to explain like what that means to
I will.
me? Okay.
So everyone at the firm, we're all plaintiffs lawyers, and this is something I'm a big believer that you're either a plaintiff's lawyer or you're not. I've been practicing law for 18 plus years, and there was a short period of time where I did insurance defense. And it was a means to an end. I wanted to save up money. I moved out to California again. Being a
Yeah,
plaintiff.
so okay, so round two
Yes.
of California. We're not
Yeah.
gonna we won't get you that far up, but like so you had California, you had an itch. You
Yeah.
still had that California itch, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So I went to college at UC Santa Barbara, came back here for law school, worked as an attorney in Illinois for 4.5 years, and then moved to LA, got licensed in California, worked as a lawyer out there for 3 years, and then moved back to Chicago. So I still have my 310 area code on my cell phone.
Yeah.
There's still a part of me.
There you go.
And then one more thing. I lived in LA. We weren't even engaged at the time, but to my now wife, came back to Chicago, started a firm, and we actually then went back out to Napa and got married in Napa. So
Nice. Did you
yeah,
meet her there or here in Chicago?
here, Chicago.
Okay,
So
all right.
I can't get enough of California. I'm still licensed out there. My
Oh,
area.
good. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
And
So
by the way, before you continue, I don't mean I really don't like to interrupt, but I just want to say before I forget, Lawyer Stories is connected to like, and I'm sure you are too, but like a lot of Californians, like personal injury, like whatever. Like, we're happy to like introduce you and connect you to like anybody out there that we might know that that you might see us interacting with on social media or having the podcast. Like we are completely like that's what I love to do. That's the heart of it. Like I will connect you to whoever I know that you might want to have a warm intro to.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
I was going through your podcast, going, down the list of all the people you've had on. I'm like, I know this person. I know that
Oh
person.
yeah, all right.
Yeah, I follow like half of the people you have
good.
On Instagram. Good. I was just talking to Taylor before we came on. I saw you were a guest on PIM.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. I follow them religiously.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think you're wired to be a plaintiff's attorney or not.
Okay.
What I mean by that is there's been people at the office who've worked for us, and it's really just it's like not in their DNA, it's not in their blood. As a plaintiff's attorney, you've really got to want to represent individuals. You need to be aggressive. You need to be organized. You need to be motivated. We steer the entire case, right? So we're the ones litigating. If we don't do anything, nothing happens in the case. And then also our entire practice, whether it's a personal injury case on a contingency fee, or whether it's a consumer rights case on a fee shift provision, we don't get paid until we get money for our client. Right. So there's a lot of motivation. There's a lot of like strategy that goes into it. Taylor and I are super competitive. We held our first golf charity event this couple of months ago, and we actually had like side bets on who could get more people, who could raise more money.
Yeah.
So like I say, it's really got to be like in your blood, in your DNA, if you want to be a successful plaintiff's lawyer. It's not easy. It's a ton of work. And when you think about it, if we don't do anything, we don't get our clients money. And if we don't get our clients money, we don't get paid. And if we don't get paid, we don't have a law firm.
Well, I think you just gave us some great info about being a plaintiff's attorney and the mindset. Isn't it really hard to start though? Like if you're saying, hey, I think I can do this, like, but then you have to like put out all the fees and like you don't have any clients, like. And I've talked about this before on the show. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you were like, if you wanted to be a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer, and then maybe you had like a little DUI practice on the side, so you could be charging like a flat fee? Like, how does that work? Like, how do you get started with it?
Yeah, so this is where I feel like I was fortunate when I was in LA as a lawyer from 2008 to 2011. It's totally by chance that I ended up working at a consumer rights firm, where I learned about debt collection harassment cases, Fair Credit Reporting Act cases. What's nice about those cases is there's a fee shift provision, and the cases aren't necessarily worth a lot of money in damages. And because there's a fee shift provision, the cases tend to settle pretty quickly. So when you sue a debt collector who's harassing a consumer, and that debt collector's got to hire a lawyer, not only are they hiring a lawyer and paying the defense fees, but when we settle, they pay our fees.
Right.
And so there's a huge motivation, and you totally have the upper hand as a plaintiff's attorney. So I learned how to handle consumer rights cases quickly and efficiently. And that allowed me to start my firm in 2012. So when I started, I focused on the consumer side of things, although I was doing PI cases as well. And then as the consumer rights practice built up, I then had, some money, and I could dedicate it to focusing on personal injury.
Wow, and that's like kind of a risk too. I mean, you really have to believe in yourself and as an attorney to say, I'm going to like put some money out there and like, become like a personal injury attorney, I think, right? I mean, because you don't get paid right away.
Right. And like Taylor mentioned earlier, so the consumer rights practice is a niche practice. I would say, it's the total opposite of doing personal injury. I would say there's probably 10 or 15 firms in the country that handle the consumer rights cases on the volume that we do.
Okay.
Whereas there's probably 10 or 15,000 personal injury attorneys in Chicago, so it's like,
right.
So we use the consumer practice. It's a niche practice, use that to get some money to build the practice, and then started hiring people, and then had money to do advertising and marketing. And I would say now, we spend an insane amount of time and money on advertising, marketing, the website that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. Yeah.
Was that you, by the way, when you go to the website? Is that you with like or who is that?
On the landing page, the people?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're no, it's not me.
Okay, all right. No, that's it. That's all I wanted to ask about that.
No. But
I was like flipping back and forth. I was like, that Mike? No, that's not Mike. Doesn't look like Mike.
yeah, the
That Mike?
guy with the scruff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had seen me yesterday, you would have probably if you had seen me this morning, I think I could have pulled it off a lot better.
Okay.
So yeah, I know it was a quick question for you, but I wanted to give you like a little bit of background.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. So, we're the plaintiff's firm, and I gave you the explanation of, what it means to be a plaintiff's attorney. So our whole brand is people first. And so when you landed on our website, it's none of us, right?
Yeah.
I would say 99% of other personal injury firms, you land on their webpage and you see a bunch of, wealthy dudes in expensive suits bragging about their, verdicts, right?
And the big city in the background, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And look, there's and I don't mean that in a bad way. There's nothing wrong with that. And Chicago has some of the most successful attorneys in the country. Speaking of, like, there was a $300+ million verdict in Cook County yesterday. No joke, on a single plaintiff case. So Chicago has incredible lawyers. We're like our brand is people first. And so when you land on our webpage, it's all about people, individuals, clients. We, treat our clients like family, friends, and neighbors. And it's all about them, as opposed to sometimes lawyers portraying themselves where it's all about us.
Yep. Well, and one thing I did pick up too, I picked up a few things from, your site and what you do is, like, you're all about the story, right? So, like, I want to jump to Taylor and ask, like, how do you ensure that you get the client's story? I know that's a big part of your firm, is making sure that you capture what's going on with the client. If they come to you at like one of their most vulnerable times in their life, an injury, and they have a story, like, what do you do to make sure that you have captured all of it?
What's important is we jump on cases right away, start with the investigation, because you're right, people come to us at a really bad time, and sometimes they don't even know what exactly happened. They don't know the extent of their injuries, and we're kind of left with puzzle pieces, and we have to put it all together by gathering all the evidence, whether it's a car accident, getting body cameras, police reports, and then it continues with the medical records and putting it all together. Because when a client comes to us after they've been treating, they don't know how many appointments that they've gone to. They don't know what their medical bills are. Sometimes it's really difficult to just get a list of providers. If someone's really injured and they've seen several doctors, they might not have that information handy. So after we have all this information, and we have Litify, which is Salesforce case management system for law firms, it's incredible. It makes it really easy for us to communicate with our clients, constantly follow up with them for updates on treatment and status. And that's how we're able to, determine their story and keep up with everything.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned through another podcast, actually, that I noticed on your website, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to think I'm right, but you have a few intake people. And I think, like, that is really important, to have a few intake people, because if you have somebody who's not a designated intake person, they might not hear the story as well. And, like, somebody could go through some catastrophic injury, or some, I don't know if you do actually, like, catastrophic injuries, but a huge injury in their life, and, like, they have to tell this person about it. A designated intake person, that's their job, to hear about it, right? It's not the paralegal answering the phone saying, hey, I'm in the middle of like 5,000 things, like, I can't really talk to you. So I don't know, I kind of like am giving you guys credit for having like a few intake people there. Am I onto something?
You are. That's the secret sauce.
That is, okay.
Yeah. No.
Did I give it away to everyone?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. So we have 3 full-time people, and they're 3 full-time people who do intake. And then our senior paralegal manages the intake. And what's awesome about, what Taylor mentioned, to just add on to the program we use, which is Litify, we rolled it out April of last year. It's Salesforce, it's law firm software built on Salesforce. I absolutely love it. It's awesome. And it really helps out the intake team because we have a seamless system at the office. And so we've got 3 full-time people managing all of the intakes. And then if they have any questions, everyone at the office uses Slack, interoffice. I don't know if you're familiar with it, interoffice messaging platform. So
Yeah.
Litify for the intake team has certain questions based on, why people are contacting us. And then while the intake team is talking to one of our potential clients, they can Slack the lawyers and ask questions about, hey, I've got someone on the phone. They were involved in, a trucking accident. And, we can go, it's real time that we can go back and forth with the intake team. And like Taylor mentioned, what's so important is capturing all the information in the beginning and working on the case the moment that we get retained. So yeah,
Right.
I can't tell you how much time and money we spend on technology and our website, but it makes, things at the office seamless, and then it makes our clients happy, which is ultimately the that's the goal.
That's awesome. So like, what do you wish more people knew about like personal injury or like consumer rights, legal issues, like when things go wrong for them? Is there something that you wish they knew more about?
Sure. So I'll answer the personal injury one. I'll let Taylor answer the consumer rights one. So on the personal injury side of things, I think it's really important for people to know that, we handle these cases on a contingency fee. So anyone who retains us will never pay us a penny unless we get a settlement.
Mhm.
And then on top of it, it's important for people, to know, specifically about our firm and what we've done over the last, several years is we've developed an incredible network of doctors, physical therapists, rehab specialists, all over Illinois, and we're expanding into some other states so we can get people incredible treatment and immediate treatment, which is so important in a personal injury case. We get our clients in to see orthopedic physicians within a matter of a day or two. So it's a really stressful situation for people, and a lot of people don't like lawyers. And, I always like to tell people there's 1.3 million attorneys in the country. We are different than the rest of the attorneys in the country. It's on purpose. We like to do things differently. For example, we were set up to work remotely before COVID happened.
Awesome.
So we had to fine tune things. We have a very casual office. It's very tight knit. We all talk with each other every day. And, when people come to us in a super stressful situation, we know how to manage it. We know how to handle it. And it's just important for people to know that there's not a risk, right? Because they don't pay anything for us unless we get a settlement. I'd say another thing that sets us apart from other firms is we have a 1/3 contingency fee. That fee never changes. So if we file a lawsuit, go to trial, that fee never goes up.
Does it go up elsewhere? I always assumed it was 1/3.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yes, people will charge, 1/3 pre-suit, and if a suit's filed, they'll charge 40%. If it goes to trial, they'll charge 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ethical. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Illinois doesn't, I was listening. There's a PI guy I follow pretty closely in Michigan. I think Michigan statutorily has it, the fees are 1/3, but in Illinois, and don't quote me on that. But anyway, Illinois is not like that. California is not like that. I'm licensed out there. I know that. So yeah, so we're different in that sense where our contingency fee doesn't change. We're super accessible. We talk, text, email our clients all day long. And like I said, we've got a pretty tight knit group at the office, and we all know what's going on all the time. It's,
Okay.
you'll never have a time where you contact us and we don't get back to you.
How many cases would you say settle with you, or as opposed to going to trial and all that?
Yeah, I mean, in general,
In
settlements,
general.
I would say we settle most of our cases.
Okay.
We definitely try cases, but I think we have a little bit of a different philosophy on cases where, I'm conservative when there's money on the table. I tell people,
Okay.
all the time, guaranteed money is better than no money.
Mhm.
And you never know what a jury is going to do. And
True.
I give you a real world example. Yesterday, that $300+ million verdict in Cook County. I was reading, Cook County does something awesome. They give it's called the Jury Verdict Reporter, and it tells you all of the cases that have been tried and what the verdicts are in Chicago. And then they also quarterly or every couple of months push out like settlements, so you can see all these cases that settle. I was reading a construction negligence verdict that came out yesterday, and the jury came back with like a $9 million verdict.
Wow.
And it tells you what the demand was and what the offers were.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
totally. And this case was fascinating. Did you read this, Taylor?
No, I didn't.
So it's like a massively complex construction case. I'm sure there was comp involved, unions, like, and a very prominent firm handled the case. Long story short, it was a $9 million verdict. The offer was $7.5 million. Now, I know you can Monday morning quarterback all the time, but if like at our office, we would, if there's a reasonable offer on the table, and I don't know much about the case, but I'll tell you $7.5 million will go a long way.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think like that's sort of a risk to go from 7.5 to 9. I mean, who am I to say? But I just think like I could kind of see is that kind of what you're getting at? Like,
yeah. So we're efficient, we're aggressive. We really try to get reasonable offers early in the case, so costs aren't going up, which ultimately comes out of a settlement. So our goal is to get our client a reasonable offer and have it be guaranteed. So we settle cases all the time. However, we do try cases. If there's no settlement, we'll try cases. It doesn't happen often, just because, in my opinion, when you're reading the jury verdict reporters, you're seeing the settlements and you know what's going on and you've handled enough of these cases, you have a general idea of what the case is worth. And on top of it, all these insurance companies, it's all just data and numbers to them. And so they know what a case is worth.
right.
So I don't know. I tell clients like, look, if you think the case is worth 100 grand and they're offering you 75, we could go litigate the case for 3 years. We may have an extra 10 grand in costs. And even if, we go to trial and you get 90 grand instead of 75, you're going to put less in your pocket because of all of our costs that are involved.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So I try to look at things more practically. We never let like ego, greed get in the way. It's all about just getting our clients reasonable settlement, and it's guaranteed. So.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Not letting your ego and greed get in the way. I think that's great. No, it is. I mean, believe me, I feel like I see that happen. I mean, I'm here at Lawyer Stories. Like I read all this stuff, man. Like I feel like I see that happen, but I like your practical, reasonable approach, getting the best offer for your client. All right, let's move on. So can you provide?
Oh wait, I think Taylor was going to answer because
consumer. That's right. Sorry, Taylor.
Right.
Everyone knows PI, and I think the consumer rights, it's niche, and like people don't know about it. They don't teach it in law school. So I'll let Taylor tell you why it's so important.
Yeah, one thing I wish that all consumers knew is that we can help them out for free, but we don't work on a contingency fee like the personal injury practice. So people who are being harassed by debt collectors, they have inaccurate information on their credit report, we can help them. And because of that fee shift provision, the other side pays our fees and costs. And a lot of times we can get our clients statutory damages, actual damages, debt waiver, get their credit report fixed. I mean, it's really like the best of all worlds, and they don't have to worry about paying our firm a penny. We front the costs, which are typically, relatively small, filing and service. And, we only get paid if we win. So we take the cases that we're confident we're going to win on, and our clients are really happy. So I just wish more people knew that they could reach out to us. The consultation is free. We have an awesome intake team that will help them out.
Yep.
That's just the one thing that if more consumers knew that, we'd be able to help more people. But they think it's too good to be true because they think lawyers are expensive.
Yeah, totally. I think that's very good advice. So can you provide us with some steps where to encourage people to be like better advocates for themselves? Like how can people probably in like consumer issues, like how can they sort of be advocates for themselves?
I'd say check your credit report. Depending on what stats you look at, anywhere from 25% to 1/3 of adults in the country have something inaccurate on their credit report.
Really?
100%. You can get a free copy of your credit report at annualcreditreport.com. People should check it. They should check it routinely. You used to only be able to check it once a year, but now because of COVID, I think you can check it once a week, once a month. Anyway, check your credit report, make sure things are accurate on it. I can tell you that people, it affects everyone. You could be on the verge of bankruptcy and have something inaccurate on your credit report. You could be a physician making $1 million a year and have something inaccurate on your credit report.
And it could be a great way to identify identity theft really early on if you see something on your credit report that you don't recognize.
Right. Okay.
And one other thing, so the credit report's a huge thing. And then it's also important for people to know that if they do have debt and they are being harassed, the last thing you would think of is like, oh, I'm going to go hire an expensive lawyer. It's called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and it's a federal law. States have very similar. There are certain states that have state laws that protect consumers from debt collectors and creditors. So if you're having a financial issue and you're getting harassed at work, or people are calling your family members over a debt, reach out. We help people all the time with these issues. There's a fee shift. They don't pay our fees. The other side does. And I can tell you, we help out a lot of these people every single month. But yeah, I wish people knew that they have rights when it comes to debt collection harassment. They have rights when it comes to credit reports. Okay. Are you going to check your credit report when we're done, Ben?
It's funny. I just upgraded my car, and like the guy in finance at the car place like could not get over like my credit score. He's like, "Oh man, I've been trying to break into like this number for so long. How did you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know, dude. Like I pay my bill on time." Like I didn't really know what to tell him, But so I think I know like where I'm at, but maybe I will check it. What's that website? Annual Credit Report.
Annualcreditreport.com.
All right. So anyway, maybe we'll look at that after. So tell us about some of the memorable cases that you've tried. Do you have any out there, like a couple like synopsis cases that you want to tell us about?
I'll tell you about a really memorable case of mine. I represented a woman a few years ago who came to us. She was in a rear end accident, and the driver who caused the accident didn't have insurance. So we opened up a claim with her own insurance company, and she'd been using the same insurance company for 10 years. It was a soft tissue injury. She had owned her own daycare center out of her home. She was out of work for 6 months, had to hire an assistant when previously she was running the daycare herself. The policy limits were not significantly high, and her medical bills were over 3 times the amount of the policy limits.
Wow.
The insurance company would not pay out on the claim initially, and she was just so frustrated and confused. She's like, "This is my insurance company. Why are they not paying it?" And we ended up having to present her for a statement and really twist their arms, but they dragged their feet. They ultimately did pay the limits, but this is just a great example of how insurance companies don't have your back. They are in the business of making money and keeping money, and the way they do it is by not paying out or paying out as little as possible on claims.
Right. Okay, so she was obviously very, very satisfied with your work.
Yes,
she was. So I always wonder, like, why would they deny her? Like, what was the little like fine print thing that they saw in there that she was like, "We're not gonna like." And if you don't remember, that's okay. But like, you could just tell us generally, like, why do insurance claims get denied like that?
You know what? She had a little bit of spotty treatment because she didn't have health insurance, so she couldn't afford it. And so they tried to use that as a reason to not pay out on the claim, even though they knew very well that she had no pre-existing condition, never had back I mean, she ran a daycare out of her house. Of course, she didn't have back issues prior to the accident, but they'll use any excuse like that to minimize payouts on claims.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, do you have something you want to tell us about? I'm sure you have a few.
Yeah, so it's a really sad case, but it sort of ties into being a plaintiff's lawyer and answering your question earlier. So it's a horrible story, but I'll never forget the case. So it was my first job out of law school. I'd been licensed like a couple of months and was at this firm, and they gave me a case literally that hadn't been touched in a while. And I was sort of just told to clean the dust off and get it organized and work it out.
That's funny. I'm sorry. They're just like, "Hey, here's a file that's been in the back. There might be a claim, there might not be, but go ahead."
Yeah. And I don't think they watch your podcast. So I'll share this.
What? They don't watch my podcast? Send them the link, man. Let's go.
I know, right? Yeah. So I feel when I'm talking about previous employers, I feel okay talking.
No, I get it. Go, yeah. Whatever
Anyways,
you're comfortable with, Mike.
What's that?
Whatever you're comfortable with, Mike. Come on.
It was an awful case. It's super sad. It's probably the most horrific case I've ever worked on. The file was a disaster. This woman was in her early 20s, late teens, early 20s, had been in and out of psychiatric hospitals over the years. She was discharged from a hospital here in Chicago, actually not far from my house. And she was discharged from that hospital, being transported over into a psychiatric unit, which is also close to my house. And she was on a highway that's probably like 2 miles from my house. And on the highway at 60 miles an hour, she was not strapped into the gurney, jumped out of the ambulance and committed suicide on the highway. It was an awful, awful case. And I remember when I was told to work on it, it took me a while to organize things and see where they were at. And I was basically told, sort of clear off the dust and let's get this case going.
What's like your first step with something like that?
It took a while to organize the file. And the first step was get things organized, read the records and bills, read the police report, and, sort of see where we're at with the case. And the firm I was at was not super tech savvy. So it took a minute to get organized, but I read it. It was awful. I remember coming home thinking it's such a terrible case. It's so sad. But anyway, being the plaintiff's lawyer that I was, I got things organized. I figured out what needed to be done, and then just started litigating aggressively, whether, it was discovery, taking depositions of, the 2 guys in the ambulance, transporting her, deposing the nurses, the ER or the doctor who discharged her from the hospital. And it was, it was just an awful case.
So how long had elapsed between the time of the accident and when they told you to clean up the file?
I was at that firm for a year, and it was probably 3 months in when I was there, they, assigned the case to me and told me to work it up. I mean, granted, the partner was on the file. I had supervision and was.
Oh, okay. So.
Reporting to him. And no, so this what, but I took a bunch of deps. We litigated aggressively, and then I ended up leaving that firm, but I found out about 6 months after I left that the case ended up settling. So it was a great experience. For horrific the case it was a great experience for me in the sense of being the one calling the shots, being in the driver's seat. It was an example of things not getting done unless you actually do them. But I got to see the case through, and like I said, when I left, it had settled a few months later. But
that sounds like a huge case. That could be a huge. This lady plunged. Who actually gave you? Was it her estate? What happened? How'd that get on your desk? Who gave it to the partner or whatnot?
So the family of the daughter, the parents of the daughter, knew one of the partners at the firm.
Did they Venmo you any settlement money, or how did that work?
Did they have Venmo back then?
No, I'm just kidding. But it just sounds like you should have gotten something for putting that thing together, man. I mean, that's a heck of a job. I mean, it sounds like it's probably it might have been a decent settlement. I mean, that's crazy. She jumped out of something. That's what, it's negligence, right? They didn't.
Yeah. So the big dispute in the case, and I remember it perfectly. So the hospital that discharged her on the discharge order said that she was a suicide risk. And there was a big question about whether or not she should have been restrained in the gurney that she was on inside the ambulance.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And as it turns out, the hospital, through experts, did what they were supposed to do. And it was the ambulance who messed up and should have been paying closer attention. What's really sad, super sad about it is, she was a tiny woman. She was probably not even 100 pounds. And there was an ambulance driver. And then I took the guy's deposition who was sitting on the bench next to the gurney, who was doing paperwork, not paying attention to her. And I mean, this guy could have played professional football. He's probably 6'5", 275 pounds. He could have stopped her with his pinky, but he wasn't paying attention.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were afraid he was going to jump you on your way out of the depot.
Oh no, he was crying at his death. I mean, it was
all right.
awful.
Yeah.
He felt terrible, and
Oh my gosh.
he was a young kid. I mean, the whole case was just like gut wrenching. But anyway, it goes to show that like being organized, being efficient, being
Yeah.
aggressive, calling
Yeah.
the shots, ultimately, settles the case. I tell people at the office all the time that like cases will settle, a personal injury case and even the consumer rights stuff. It's most likely to settle at 2 points, either right before you file a lawsuit, or right before you go to trial. So the faster you can get to either one of those points, the faster the case will settle. So the case had already been filed when I was assigned to it. And so the finish line is trial. And I litigated, the case as quickly and as aggressively as possible to get to trial. And it ultimately settled.
Wow. That's a great story, actually. I really like it. Thanks for
sad.
sharing that. It's very sad, but thank you for sharing that. Taylor, what population do you think, just to sort of shift gears here, Mike, I know that was like very sad story, but Taylor, like what population do you think is most targeted towards consumer fraud? Is there a certain population? I know everybody can be sort of subject to it, but is there like
Absolutely. Everyone is. I mean, we have clients as young as, they're not like legal to drink. And,
right?
People are older. We have, it's for credit reporting, although it's not like identity theft, but we've seen a lot of cases where father, son, John Smith Jr., their credit files, so their credit reports are actually mixed. They have each other's information
Okay.
on their credit reports because of similar names. So sometimes that's a case where someone's credit report, there's information that's just someone else's, but actual identity theft, I mean, it happens to everyone. And I will say one of the quickest ways that people find out about it is by regularly monitoring their credit report and by using like credit monitoring systems, whether it's through like your bank account or something where it says, hey, your credit card was used here, and then jumping on it. That's another big way that people reach out to me from all chapters of my life. Is they're like, I didn't make these charges. I don't know what's going on. What do I do next? This happened to my dad like a year ago, and
Really?
he's like, what's next? Pull your credit report, see what else is on there. You need to contact the bureaus, freeze your credit report. There are steps that you need to take, and the quicker you take them, the sooner you can get on top of being a victim of identity theft, the sooner you'll clear it up. But it really messes with your life.
So are there any like ongoing trends right now with certain type of consumer fraud that you can identify? Like, are there really certain issues that are hot right now that either of you could tell me about, that you're seeing a lot of cases or issues?
I would say credit reporting is huge just because, with the pandemic and there were so many things moving, whether deferred payments or you didn't have to, pay your mortgage. There were a lot of things that kind of got lost in translation.
Interesting.
Where there were negative reportings on people's credit reports when they're like, hey, wait, that shouldn't be on there because I spoke with the bank and they said that they wouldn't report it negative for a few months, but maybe there's no evidence of that. And then just in general with the housing market, what happens when you buy a house? They run your credit, and then people realize, well, why is my credit so low? What's going on there? And that's really crunch time because you're probably not going to get that cleared up before you close on the home. You can always refinance later, but those are really hot issues that we're seeing as far as credit reporting goes.
Okay, that makes sense. Mike, did you want to jump in too?
Just to add to what Taylor said, I'd say a big trend right now is reporting medical debt on credit reports. So there's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is, trying to make it, and I believe it was just passed, and now we've got to see, how it's going to play out in the courts. But, sort of just going easy on consumers or easier on consumers when it comes to medical debt. You were asking the question of, who does this affect? I mean, our consumer rights practice dealing with financial issues, it affects everyone. So if you have a car payment, if you have credit cards, if you have medical debt, if you have student loans, if you have a mortgage, I mean, whatever it is, it affects you. Like you were, saying that, you were at the dealership and the guy was impressed with your, you have an awesome credit score. Well, something could go wrong with your credit report tomorrow. So
And I'll blame them, man. Like I blame them for everything else.
Totally. But like if you have bills, if you have debt, cell phones, utilities, whatever it is, I mean, things get messed up and they get messed up all the time. And it's just important for people to know that they've got rights. But yeah, I'd say right now, the hot topics are medical debt and then, increasing, interest rates and, seeing if, people are going to end up going, if we're going to have a big, foreclosure, sort of wave like we did, about 10, 15 years ago. Those are some of the hot topics, but I would say since COVID, just all of the ups and downs, people getting, loans, getting relief, and then interest rates going up and, gets messy. But it affects everyone.
Totally. So what's next for Agruss Law Firm?
What's next? That's a good question. What's next? We're starting a workers' comp department. We just started it 2 months ago.
Awesome.
We hired, our comp practice goes sort of hand in hand with our PI practice. We hired a rock star attorney who's got 10 plus years of experience.
That's awesome.
We hardcore recruited her and plucked her out of the firm she was at. Right. She's got 10 plus years experience, manages 200 to 300 comp cases. And hopefully the next time we're on your show, that's what our caseload will look like as far as comp practice goes.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Is there anything we left out today, like discussing? Is there anything else you want to tell us about your firm, about your history, just about anything?
Good question.
Uh-oh.
I'm looking at our notes.
I know you are.
Yeah.
I can tell. What do you got? We got time. Whatever you want to tell us.
Yeah. What's so funny is you completely went off script.
There was a script?
At least we had one.
No?
You weren't sent questions that we were going to talk about?
Yeah, but I hit all of them.
I know.
We're still recording here, but yes, I made my way to all those questions. Did I not?
No, you totally did.
Okay. So what do we?
Yeah, I think here's I think this is important. One thing we didn't talk about is law students in law school.
I did want to ask you that. I wanted to actually. This is my bad. I want to go ahead and set this up. So if we decide to make a clip out of this, everybody listening can hear this.
Yeah.
Like I want to have the clip if this is like the best bite we get. But give us some advice for. Is this what you want to do? You want to give us advice for law students?
Yeah.
So give us some advice for some law students.
Sure. So something I wish that I was told in law school, I'm going to give you two pieces of advice. I was not given the first piece of advice. So if you're going to do plaintiff's work and work at a small firm, small-ish firm, get a job out of law school where you can get litigation experience and courtroom experience. My first job out of law school, I was there for a year. I was not even making enough money to like pay rent and pay my student loans. Right. However, I got incredible experience. I was in court nonstop. I took depositions and I litigated cases. And that's something like the story I shared with you where you said, talk about a memorable case. I've been practicing for over 18 years. The case that'll always stick with me was the case I worked on at the first firm I was at. So I got lucky in the sense that I landed at a firm where I got courtroom and litigation experience. And no matter what I do in the future, litigation wise, that has made me such a better attorney. And so if you want to do plaintiff's work, go somewhere where you get experience, because you can go work at a super successful plaintiff's firm and all the partners just handle everything. Right. And that's not good experience. You've got a good firm on your resume, but you need experience, courtroom litigation. Second piece of advice I would give law students that I didn't learn this until, starting the firm 10 plus years ago. We are small business owners that just happen to practice law. So running a law firm is like running a business. And if you're going to run a business, you need to know how to advertise. You need to know how to market. You need to know how to keep clients happy. We are in the service industry, professional service industry. There's 1.3 million attorneys out there, and we are trying to, set ourselves apart from everyone else. And literally, we look at the day-to-day operations as running a business, just like you would if you were a real estate agent or a mortgage broker. Mm-hmm. So I wish someone told me that, during law school. On the other hand, I was fortunate enough to, start learning it 10 and a half years ago. And it's something that we focus on, every single day at the office. It's all about being in the service industry. It's the reason why we have 3, full-time people on the intake team. We're running a business, and we just happen to be lawyers.
That's awesome. Taylor, did you want to add anything to that, or?
I do have one piece of advice.
Okay.
I would take advantage of trying different opportunities in law school, different areas of law, different law firms, maybe corporations, but that's really like a good time to explore what you like and what you don't like. And that'll make it a lot easier when you get out of law school to get in a place where you'll actually be happy.
Makes sense, for sure. Very good advice. Mike, was there anything else on script that you wanted to bring us back to?
I'm not going to live that down, huh? No, you know what? I'm glad things went. I'm glad things went off script. I feel like
it wasn't. Okay. So yeah.
Wait. You know what it is? It's a credit to you. You do a really good job in the sense of you've got a roadmap ahead. You've got a roadmap in front of you, but you asked, you did it your way, which I like.
I got my own roadmap, but hey, I made it through to your roadmap, and hey, you guys are very impressive. They're in Chicago. I really appreciate you coming out and supporting Lawyer Stories, and doing your thing, telling us all about your firm, and sharing some important cases with us that you've had, and good knowledge. So is there any other final words before we close out?
Thanks for having us on. This was awesome. And hopefully we'll come back on again in the future, or maybe we'll see we'll see you at a seminar coming up.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
And oh, sorry, Taylor.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Stay right there. Everybody tuning in, hope you enjoyed wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers.